Daniel Carter had always prided himself on his work ethic. He clocked in at dawn, left at dusk, and volunteered for the late shift when no one else would. He told himself it was all to provide a good life for his wife, Emily, and their 2 children, Liam and Sophie. But deep down, he knew there was another reason. He was simply more comfortable lost in spreadsheets, planning marketing strategies, or analyzing quarterly returns than he was facing the daily chaos of real life. Numbers made sense. People, even family, sometimes felt like a mystery. That particular day had been more brutal than most. An important client threatened to pull out of a contract if certain performance metrics weren't met by week's end. Daniel spent 12 hours in the office, fueled by black coffee and stress, scrambling to find a solution. By the time he left, the sun was long gone. Only the sterile glow of streetlights accompanied him as he trudged toward his car. He practically collapsed into the driver's seat and closed his eyes, wishing he could fall asleep right there. A mental image of Emily's warm smile and the laughter of his children reminded him why he worked so hard. Home. It was late, close to 10, but he had promised Emily he would try to make it back before the kids went to bed. Another promise broken, another vow chipped away by the demands of the job. He started the car and rolled out of the near-empty parking lot. The roads were eerily quiet, with only a few headlights flickering in the distance. As he merged onto the highway, a strange unease settled in his stomach. It felt like more than mere exhaustion. It felt like a warning. By the time he pulled onto Willow Lane, an odd hush blanketed the neighborhood. The houses stood silently, lights out or dimmed, as though everyone was asleep or had vanished. Even the occasional barking dogs, a staple of suburban nights, had fallen silent. The street appeared deserted. His house was at the far end of the cul-de-sac, a cozy 2-story with a small front yard. Emily tended the garden meticulously each summer. A warm porch light usually welcomed him, but tonight that light was absent. Instead, he saw that the front door stood slightly ajar. A chill ran down his spine. Emily was vigilant about security and never left doors unlocked. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, heart thumping harder than it should. He stepped out of the car, the cool night air prickling his skin. Crickets would normally chirp at this hour, but there was only an uneasy stillness. Approaching the porch, he noticed how the door gently swayed, hinges creaking in the faint breeze. "Emily," he called quietly. "Kids?" There was no answer. He nudged the door open the rest of the way and flipped a light switch. The living room lamp was already on, casting a soft glow that stretched shadows across the walls. He felt a brief surge of relief when he saw Emily standing in the middle of the room. At least it looked like her. Same height, same slender frame, chestnut hair curling below her shoulders. She wore a lingering smile that made Daniel uneasy. It did not appear to be her usual warm, welcoming grin. Something in her eyes seemed wrong. Before he could question it, 2 smaller figures emerged from behind her, Liam and Sophie, both staring at him with wide, unblinking eyes. "You're home?" Emily said in a voice that was oddly gentle yet hollow. Daniel forced himself to smile back. "Yeah, sorry I'm late. Work was a mess. Everything okay here?" Liam, usually boisterous, stood quietly. Sophie, who normally rushed to greet him with a hug, stayed rooted by Emily's side. They fixed their gazes on him with unsettling intensity. "We waited for you, Dad," said Liam in an even tone. Sophie nodded. "So happy you're here." The words sounded rehearsed, each syllable carefully placed. Something felt off, but Daniel tried to blame it on stress. Emily turned toward the dining room, moving almost too smoothly, as though gliding. He followed, heart thudding in his chest. A modest dinner was set on the table, but the food on the plates was cold and untouched. Emily stood at the kitchen counter, methodically chopping vegetables with a dull, repetitive thud. It looked more like a ritual than cooking. "You guys haven't eaten yet?" Daniel asked. "We were waiting for you," Emily replied, her voice low, her gaze never leaving the chopping board. "Dinner got cold. We lost track of time." Liam and Sophie took their seats, eyes never leaving Daniel. He tried the food, lasagna, which was usually a family favorite, but it tasted stale. The sauce had a metallic tang. He forced it down to avoid upsetting Emily, who remained by the counter, slowly cutting vegetables as though time had no meaning. "So," he said, clearing his throat, "how was everyone's day?" Sophie spoke in a quiet voice. "It was perfect, Daddy." Liam nodded. "Yes, perfect," Emily added. "We missed you, Daniel." She spoke as if repeating a memorized line, lacking her usual warmth. Daniel shivered inwardly. There was no sign of the normal family bustle, no homework papers, no scattered toys. Everything was too neat, too silent. He forced a smile and excused himself, claiming he needed to check something in the hallway. The hallway walls were lined with framed photographs of their happiest moments: the day Liam was born, Sophie's first steps, birthdays, the wedding. Each memory stared back at him, but he felt a growing sense of dread. In these pictures, Emily's eyes seemed off, never quite meeting the camera. In one, her irises looked entirely black. Then he heard it, a faint scratching sound from upstairs. It was so soft that he thought his mind might be playing tricks, but it grew louder, more insistent. Setting down the frame, he climbed the stairs, blood pounding in his ears. The scratching got faster, almost frantic. When he reached the top, Emily appeared at the end of the hallway, head slightly tilted. He jumped, not having heard her approach. "Why are you up here?" she asked. He swallowed. "I heard a noise, like an animal scratching." Her eyes flickered with something he couldn't name. "Come back downstairs," she said softly. "The children want to play with you." She took his hand. It felt like ice. Before he could resist, she led him back down to the living room, where Liam and Sophie were sitting on the couch, still as statues. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from a coworker saying, "Hope you're home safe." The children watched every move, eyes unblinking. "I might take a quick shower," Daniel mumbled, forcing a half smile. "Long day." "Don't be long," Emily replied. Liam and Sophie giggled in unison, a hollow sound that made his skin crawl. Daniel hurried upstairs to the bathroom and locked the door, splashing water on his face. The mirror reflected his tired features. The overhead light flickered once. For an instant, Liam and Sophie appeared behind, him in the glass, but when he spun around, they were gone, and the door was still locked. His heart thumped so loudly, he felt it in his skull. Later, he tried to settle in the master bedroom. The clock read 2:11 a.m., and he still couldn't sleep. Then came that noise again. Scratch, 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 at the door. Each sound stabbed at his nerves. "Emily?" Daniel called, voice trembling. "Kids?" No response. He opened the door a crack, shining a small flashlight into the hallway. Suddenly, the beam caught Emily crawling across the floor on all fours, limbs bent at unnatural angles. She halted, twisted her head to face him, and her eyes glowed in the harsh light. "We waited so long for you," she rasped, her voice layered, as if multiple people spoke at once. Daniel stumbled backward in horror. She scuttled away, disappearing around the corner. After a moment of frozen panic, he gathered himself enough to move. Fear for Liam and Sophie welled in him, even though part of him suspected the children he knew were gone. At their bedroom door, he found it half open. Inside, Liam and Sophie hovered inches above their beds, eyes rolled back as they whispered in a guttural language. The sight made Daniel's stomach clench. His flashlight shook in his hand. "No. Oh God," he breathed. "This can't be real." They gently settled down onto their beds, eyes snapping open. In perfect unison, they asked, "Daddy, is everything okay?" Their innocent tones clashed violently with the horror he had just witnessed. He fled downstairs, adrenaline surging. He rifled through drawers in a desperate search for car keys or anything that could explain this nightmare. Instead, he found a dusty scrapbook with newspaper clippings. Family vanishes from suburban home. Father never found. Tragedy on Willow Lane. Haunted house history. The photos matched his house, but with different families across the decades. His eyes zeroed in on one article. They mimic the ones you love. They feed on your memories. You can't outrun them once they choose you. The words seemed to describe everything he had witnessed tonight. Footsteps approached. Emily, Liam, and Sophie appeared in the living room doorway, eyes glinting like creatures from a nightmare. "You weren't supposed to see that," Emily said, her voice echoing in an unsettling way. Daniel clutched the scrapbook. "Where's my real family? What are you?" "We are many," Emily replied. "We've worn your wife's face, your children's faces, for longer than you could imagine. We take what we need to live." Liam and Sophie spoke in unison. "We are forever." Daniel backed away. The house groaned, lights flickering as if the walls themselves were breathing. He dashed for the front door, yanking at the deadbolt, but it wouldn't turn. His keys were missing, possibly upstairs. He sprinted to the back hall. Every door he opened revealed impossible corridors or black emptiness. The layout no longer matched the house he knew. It felt as though the building had rearranged itself to trap him in a labyrinth. Ducking into a closet, he saw the phone's no-signal icon mocking him. Panic pressed in, but he recalled one final line from the scrapbook. "They fear the light of truth." He clung to that like a lifeline. Rushing out, he aimed his phone's flashlight at Emily, Liam, and Sophie. They hissed, shrinking from the beam. Emily's face rippled, revealing a gaunt, skeletal visage. "You can't escape us," she snarled. "We are forever." "Stay back!" Daniel shouted, pressing forward with each step. He herded them down the corridor until he reached the front door again. This time the lock gave way. He threw the door open and stumbled onto the porch. Rain poured from a starless sky. Thunder rumbled. He whirled to see Emily, Liam, and Sophie standing in the doorway, silhouettes etched by flickering light, but they did not cross the threshold. It was as though they were bound to the house. He bolted for the car, fumbled the key into the ignition, and screeched away from the curb. His mind reeled, every nerve alight with dread. He had to get to safety, or a police station, but how could he explain what he'd seen? Lightning flashed, illuminating the back seat. In that instant, Daniel saw Emily's face reflected in the rearview mirror, pale as a ghost, eyes blazing with an unnatural light. "We're not done yet," she whispered. Daniel screamed, nearly losing control of the wheel as thunder shook the heavens. A few days later, neighbors noticed a "for sale" sign on Daniel's lawn. Speculation spread. Maybe the family decided to move, but no one had seen a moving truck or heard any farewells. The house stood ominously quiet, its windows flickering at odd hours. Before long, a real estate agent arrived with a hopeful young couple. They walked inside, envisioning a fresh start, clueless about the faint silhouette watching from an upstairs window. Something tall and still, its eyes catching the light in the strangest way. Where Daniel ended up remained unknown. Some believed he was dragged into the same darkness that consumed other families on Willow Lane. Others claimed he roamed the roads at night, forever haunted by the shape that wore Emily's face. But ask the neighbors, and many will mention ghostly lights in the windows, shadows moving when the house was supposed to be empty each time a new for sale sign went up. Local legends speak of vanishings spanning decades, all linked to this house with its shifting interiors and beings that wear borrowed faces. Each time the cycle repeats. New residents appear, then vanish. Yet a for sale sign always reappears, luring the next unsuspecting soul.